Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker, shills, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm Useful Idiot, and in this video, I want to talk about this disaster that's going on with employment under the Trump administration. The latest one being 23,000 private sector jobs were shedded in the last labor report, and last month, well, actually back in August, we only gained about 22,000 jobs, which is one of the smaller employment gains we've seen in years. And then we also have all these revisions, and that's something we need to note, that a lot of times when we see these unemployment numbers and employment numbers coming out, um, they look really good at first, like under 4 years of Biden. The numbers look really great, but then they go back a month or two later, or a month or two later, they go back and they revise those figures. But by then, the cheerleading has already happened. The numbers are registered. People don't really pay attention to the revisions where they revise them down. And recently, through this method, they discovered that there's 1.7 million fake jobs stated by the BLS since the beginning of the Trump administration. And let's not, well, no, let's not forget that in the last month of the Biden administration, it was discovered that there was 1 million jobs claimed by Biden that were fake. So we're talking upwards of 3 million jobs supposedly created that turns out to be all fake. And so we really have to take these numbers with a grain of salt. And I've talked about that in a number of my videos over the last 15 years or so, that all the numbers that come out of the government you can't trust. And it doesn't matter whether it's the BLS or the CBO or any of the other government agencies, or even the corporations for that matter. All the numbers are cooked, and they're all cooked on the bright side. But when you dig a little further, you realize that we're kind of swimming upstream, because we're in an environment where a lot of layoffs are going on. So we have all the attrition going on in government jobs because of Doge. Then we have massive layoffs by corporations, and then small businesses are also downsizing right now. So we have a lot of small businesses that manage to hang on even with inflation and the tariffs, but they're downsizing. So hiring is shrinking there. A good example of that is in Seattle. 450 restaurants closed in the first 8 months of the Trump administration. 16% of all Seattle's restaurants closed in the last 8 months. And so there's going to be a lot of people put out of work there. And as far as corporations, a good example is Amazon and Microsoft. Between the two of them, they laid off about 230,000 people last year. And so far, 8 months into this year, they've laid off another 150,000. And then with these large corporations laying off so many people, of course, all the businesses that grow to support these corporate entities, including restaurants, they start hurting too. So it creates a pretty bad cycle. But when you dig a little deeper, we also have to realize inflation is doing a lot of damage. Online shopping is doing a lot of damage. The tariffs are doing a lot of damage, and corporations are moving to AI. So these are all reasons why we're going to see continued losses in employment. And AI is a huge factor. And a lot of the corporations and the government are trying to play down the impact of AI. But for example, when you see that 500,000 people laid off by Microsoft and Amazon in the last 2 years, a lot of that is AI. So we have to factor that in. But another thing we have to factor in is, I did a video on the fact that Trump is in office now, but we're still dealing with the Biden administration. So we not only had 1 million fake jobs, but we also have the economic reality and tragedy of the last 4 years under Biden, touted as some kind of economic miracle, and it was just more rot in the economic system, and it's catching up with us now. And then of course inflation is catching up with us now. Massive inflation created under the Biden administration, and it's continued to wreak carnage moving forward. But I don't want to downplay the tariffs are having a huge effect as well, and we will see that unfold moving forward. So between inflation and tariffs, there's going to be a lot more unemployment coming up, and AI will continue to grow exponentially, and a lot of jobs will be replaced. But one of the big factors, of course, is 4 years of Biden. We had really great employment numbers, and Biden bragged about his employment numbers. But when you dig into those numbers, as we found out, most of the employment gains were either illegals or government workers. And so the whole employment bonanza of the Biden years was a complete mirage. And so now we're at a point under the Trump administration where illegals are not being hired and government workers are not being hired. In fact, they're being laid off. So if you just take out those two major factors, it's no surprise that we're dealing with realistic numbers in employment and unemployment now. And so there's a lot of good reasons why um, the disaster is unfolding right now under Trump. But as I'll reiterate again, I don't want to downplay the impacts of tariffs. And we're going to see certain sectors thrive under the tariffs, but we're going to see a lot of other sectors have real problems. And so unemployment numbers are probably not going to be that good moving forward for a long time. And then let's remember, too, the public's under a lot of pressure. Credit card debt is at historic highs. Mortgage debt is at historic highs. Auto loan debts are at historic highs, and student loan debt are at historic highs. And worse than that, we have historic delinquencies in all of those. So there's a lot of pressure on people, and a lot of them are going to buckle, and we're going to see even more numbers uh, that are going to look bad moving forward in employment. And and we're seeing massive layoffs at corporations around the world, and so there's not going to be any relief coming from them. So this unemployment and employment disaster is far from over, but the blame doesn't belong to Trump right now. We can start pointing the fingers at Trump in another year or into next year as we see the results of the tariffs. But right now, it's just facing an economic reality that the historic economy and employment claimed by Biden was all a mirage, and now we're seeing the reality of it up front. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm Useful Idiot. Don't you be one too.